welcome to Pale Blue Pod, the astronomy podcast for people who are overwhelmed by the universe but want to be its friend. I'm Dr. Moiya McTier, an astrophysicist, a folklorist, and a good friend to the universe. We have a standing brunch appointment where we get together and dish all the gossip that we've just experienced every week. I am recording today in my office at the Pale Blue Podiversity, and I am not expecting a guest. I'm here alone to celebrate episode 150 of Pale Blue Pod with you all. I kind of can't believe I made it to episode 150, to be completely honest with you. I have started 2 podcasts before Pale Blue Pod. The first got to maybe 10 episodes. The second, Exolore, was my brain baby. I loved Exolore so much, and I got to 100 episodes and really couldn't do any more because I was getting too busy. And the idea of getting to 150 with Pale Blue Pod seemed so far away when I started it, and here we are. So no matter how long you've been on the journey with me, if you started at the beginning with the very first episode on whether or not Pluto is a planet, or if you joined after Corinne left and all you know of Pale Blue Pod is me talking to a new person every week, well, welcome and thank you. Thank you so much for being with me. I want to celebrate episode 150 by sharing some statistics with you, sharing my favorite episodes, and also sharing some of the lessons that listeners told me they had learned from Pale Blue Pod. I asked on Instagram a couple weeks ago, and I absolutely loved the responses. So let's get into the statistics first and foremost. I have released This is episode 150. So I've put out 149 episodes of Pale Blue Pod over almost exactly 3 years. It's a weekly podcast, 52 weeks in a year. You know, we can do the math there. And out of those 150 episodes, I've covered 14 movies, 1 TV series, and 1 video game with Misha, the editor of the pod. I've covered 10 different telescopes, including, of course, Kepler, my favorite mission out in space, and 12 scientist bios. I really like how neatly spread out that was. It wasn't completely intentional. Just to give you a little bit of behind the scenes info, back when Corinne was a co-host and we were deciding what topics to cover in the episode, we would try and keep on kind of a pattern. If we hadn't done a movie in a while, we would do one of those, but it wasn't, counted out every 10 episodes. But it's nice that it kind of worked out that way. I also did 8 author interviews about space books with some friends and colleagues from the astronomy community. The authors of astronomy books, are kind of the only astro people I have let come on the show, because when I started it with Corinne, the intention was never to have 2 academics sitting here engaging in the type of conversation that 2 academics will engage in. I know that if I'm talking to another astrophysicist, the conversation's just not going to be as inclusive and welcoming as I want it to be. I want someone there to ask me questions when I stop making sense and remind me that not everyone has been brought up in this tradition, this academic tradition. And so I only have some very special astro people on the show. I also had 1 composer interview with Rory Bricca. That was so much fun. I loved listening to his piece, Active Galactic Nuclei, and hearing his composer commentary in real time. That's one of my favorite creator interviews that I've gotten to do through Pale Blue Pod. I've also done 10 interviews with experts in other fields, ranging from neuroscience to theater to law. I had Emily Rice from Startorialist come on to talk about her business that she started with other astronomers. And I had Fraser Kane on, who created Universe Today, one of the biggest space-themed independent publications, definitely online, if not anywhere. And that was really cool because I know Fraser from back in the day when I was kind of getting started as a science communicator, doing weekly space hangout with the Universe Today team. And that was a weekly rotation of different science communicators coming together to share a news story from astronomy that week. And I would go on about once a month, and I would try not to always talk about planet stuff. Fraser was really good at bringing young science communicators onto his team and encouraging them to go outside of their communication comfort zone. So I would occasionally cover stories about black holes or cosmology stuff, like the beginning and like maybe ultimate fate of the universe. And that made me a stronger science communicator. So it was great to have Fraser on Pale Blue Pod. Okay, those are the statistics. All the other episodes were kind of miscellaneous astronomy things. I went to, I think, 3 different conferences that I talked about on the show. Corinne and I covered all of the planets in the solar system, including Earth. I then went on to do the sun. And you know what I haven't done yet? The moon. I did a whole episode about formation of moons, but I think it'd be nice to do just like a straight up Luna episode. And so that'll be coming sometime in the near future. You can expect that. 150 episodes is actually enough that I have started to struggle to figure out what topics to do next. So I would love to hear from you all. What do you want to learn about? What do you want me to talk about in the universe? And, that'll give me some ideas. Okay, I do have some favorites out of these 150 episodes. It's hard to pick them, but I do have 9 episodes here that at least are my favorites in this moment. And maybe if you ask me tomorrow, that will change. But I chose 9 because I do prefer odd numbers over even, personally. But also this way, I can make the ratio of Corinne to non-Corinne episodes the right ratio because Corinne was here for 100 episodes, 2/3 of 150. So 6 of these episodes had Corinne and 3 of them did not. But I'm going to go not in order of my least to most favorite or whatever. I don't think I could choose that from this list. I'm instead going to go in the order in which they were released. So starting really early with episode 6, I now put all of my notes in a Google Doc and I would share it with Corinne, and then we would look through it together as we were recording the episodes. But episode 6 was early enough that I was still putting notes like on the notes app in my phone. Processes were developed over time, just to give you some more BTS, I guess. The episode 6 was called Light on a Feather Down Couch. It's the episode where Corinne and I go through all of the different regions of the electromagnetic spectrum, from the super long wavelength radio waves to the very short wavelength gamma rays. And I discussed how each of the different regions were discovered, what types of objects in space you can see through that type of light, and a little bit about the nature of light itself. And so that was, I think, a really important episode to have up front because so much of astronomy is based on observations of light. But people who aren't astrophysicists don't necessarily have a familiarity with the different regions. You know, a lot of people don't even understand that radio is still light and not audio waves. Of course, when the sound comes out of your radio speakers, those are audio waves. But the way that the radio receives the information is through light waves, through these really long wavelengths that can travel far through the sky. This was also the first episode where I got to mention the National Radio Quiet Zone, one of my favorite places in the United States. So here's me geeking out about that. Not in the entire radio quiet zone, but in the center around the GBT and the other telescopes at the observatory. There are very strict rules about what radio waves you can emit. And pretty much everything we do emits radio waves. So when you're in the center of the radio quiet zone, you can't use Wi-Fi. You can't use cell phones. You can't use microwaves.
Okay. Well, I might be fine there.
Right. Do you live in the radio quiet zone?
Oh, a twist.
If you do want to use some of those things, you have to do it in a Faraday cage, which is this contraption that will block electromagnetic radiation.
Oh, okay.
And then you also have to drive like special cars that don't have spark plugs because they'll give off radio waves.
Oh my gosh.
All of this is so that when you're taking an observation on one of these radio telescopes, you don't have to worry about accidentally catching a signal from just like Joe Schmo heating up a burrito in his microwave.
Oh my God. Yeah, of course. I understand logically why you need to do it, but it somehow feels like so restrictive.
Yeah. And so the people who work there, they know going into it that they're going to have these restrictions. I mean, they have internet. They just have to use Ethernet cords. And they have plenty of Faraday cages around. Like I've stayed in the dorms around the GBT, and I have gone into the control room. And in all of these central spaces, they have Faraday cages where you can go in and like use a microwave.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
My next favorite episode, chronologically, is episode 18, Space Brains in a Neuro Lab. This was our first interview with a third person coming on to the show, and Morgan Johnston is a neuroscientist, so she invited us to her neuroscience lab, and we discussed some intersections between space and brains. And the reason this makes my top 9 list is because of the dolphin story. And I would try to do it justice, but I simply cannot. So here is the dolphin story.
What if I said the name Frank Drake?
Ooh. Okay. I'm intrigued. Frank Drake, we covered the Drake equation in our SETI episode.
Yes.
And Frank Drake is the person who did that. So it has something to do with extraterrestrial life then.
So SETI is heavily featured in this story. So
Good.
Frank Drake got a hold of John Lilly's book where he was explaining that dolphins want to communicate with us. And he was like, hey, if we can teach dolphins to communicate with us, we can clearly teach aliens how to communicate with us. So this is an important endeavor. With Frank Drake's help, John Lilly got funding from NASA and from SETI to study these dolphins and figure out how to teach them English. And he, with NASA's money, built a giant house that he flooded with water. He waterproofed all of the walls and stuff, flooded the house with water. And this woman named Margaret Lovett lived full time with a dolphin named, I believe his name was Peter. So the logic here was, at first they were just trying to teach dolphins how to speak English in an aquarium. But they were like, well, when you're teaching a baby how to speak English, you don't stop talking to it after 5 o'clock. You go make dinner and you talk to it while you're making dinner. So they had Margaret live with this dolphin full time and speak to him all the time as if he was a human companion.
So there were some dry rooms and some wet rooms, or was she always in a
She was always
diving
with
suit?
him. She would she had a computer that was suspended from the ceiling so that she could have electricity but also not electrocute herself in the water. She had some chairs that were above the water, but her feet would be dangling in it. And she would talk about how Peter would come up and nuzzle her feet to try to get her attention.
Okay, I'm so nervous. If this is me, I would be so nervous that we trust these cables to suspend my computer and not drop it into this bath.
And what I love about her is they've done a million interviews with her. I believe she died somewhat recently, but before that they did a bunch of interviews with her, and she was like, yeah, the first night that I spent in this dolphin house, it seemed wild. I was like, what am I doing with my life? But then everything just seemed really natural.
That happens every time you get a new roommate.
So
Exactly.
True. That's true.
We've all moved into a new house and had to flood the bottom floor for our roommate.
It happens all the time.
Every single one of us has had that experience, yes.
Yes. So Margaret lives full time with this dolphin, and supposedly she did eventually get the dolphin to say, hello, Margaret, which is a huge accomplishment.
Just like that. The words "Hello, Margaret" would come out of this dolphin's mouth.
Supposedly. I cannot find an audio recording of it, but yeah, allegedly the dolphin would say it.
Their mouth is such a different shape than ours. I'm like, how would they, to get the M sound? What's that like?
Right?
That's what's tripping you up.
Yeah, I'm like,
the M sound.
That's so funny that you mentioned the M sound, because she has specifically said the M sound was what tripped him up the most.
Wow. I'm a genius,
You're
everybody.
You are
If
a
I am
genius.
anything, it is the psychic, so.
And this is where Carl Sagan enters the story also. So Carl Sagan comes to visit because through the SETI connection, he's heard about this. And he comes to visit and he goes, hey, why are you trying to teach the dolphins to speak English? That's clearly hard for them. We should be learning how to speak dolphin.
Finally, someone with some sense.
I think I stand with that. I think I agree.
Someone with reason. So they had 2 other dolphins that they would like observe communicating with each other and try to like translate dolphin for us.
Okay.
So we could eventually speak it. The small issue with that is I used to know someone who studied dolphins, and dolphins actually communicate through a lot of things other than sound. Like, this guy that I knew who studied dolphins, apparently they, like, pee in each other's mouths to, like, communicate their names.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Morgan, you need to stop blowing my mind.
And everyone's pee is a little bit different.
Yeah, they would know the difference between, like, one dolphin's pee or another dolphin's pee.
Wow.
But the fact that it's like their identifier, you know,
Yeah.
that your pee tells someone who you are.
Yeah, it's like, hello, my name is...
Yeah. It's humans who are crazy for not doing it.
Exactly.
You're right.
I mean, all other animals, like, sniff each other in all sorts of places.
Oh, I'm literally crying.
But yeah, so Carl Sagan spent a while trying to convince John Lilly to look at teaching us to speak dolphin instead of teaching dolphins to speak English.
I love how weird astro people are. I always have. One of the reasons I dedicated myself to this field after getting free pizza as a sophomore in college, and after realizing that I guess the universe is interesting, was going to my first American Astronomical Society meeting in what must have been 2015, and seeing how many weirdos there were at the conference. There were people with fun hair, people with huge tattoos, people with in very interesting fashion choices. I just felt at home as a weirdo myself. So, you know, thanks to the dolphin story. My next favorite, chronologically, is episode 37, The Green Bank Telescope in a Lighthouse. And I am sensing a theme because this is another episode where I get to geek out over the National Radio Quiet Zone. But I'm talking about one of my favorite telescopes. I think it might be my favorite ground-based telescope. Definitely my favorite ground-based single-dish telescope, if I may add all of those caveats. The Green Bank Telescope was the first telescope I ever saw in person. I actually got to visit it in high school because it's in West Virginia. And though there are not many, personally, as a queer Black woman, there were personally not many advantages to growing up that close to West Virginia. But getting to visit the Green Bank Observatory absolutely was a benefit. And I don't just like it because I visited it. I like it because it's so big. It is 100 meters in diameter. And here is Corinne hearing how big the GBT is for the first time.
So I knew it was big, but I didn't know it was the biggest of its kind. But I was thinking, we'll play a little game at the end of the episode, and I was wondering if we should also compare weights to other things, but I did not look up how much it weighs.
Oh my God, I did. Corinne, it weighs 17 million pounds.
No.
Yes, it does. Oh my God. That's a big boy.
Can the ground support that? Like, what is the structure?
Well, they have had to raise money in the last decade or so to fix its foundation. So yeah, it's kind of a problem. And we'll get into the history of the telescope later on in the episode. But like, yeah, it's big.
It weighs that much and it can still move is insane to me.
I always loved hearing Corinne's reactions to how big or expensive or far away something was. And she was surprisingly good at estimating those things when I asked her to guess. So, shout out to Corinne for that hidden talent of hers. Not so hidden to us anymore, I guess. My next favorite episode is episode 53, UFO sightings in a cow field. Corinne and I put out this episode kind of soon after everyone was talking about aliens because of the Congress testimonies. And I was having so many conversations in my personal life about them. So I figured, you know what, I need to put it on the pod. So I watched the whole hearing and I told the listeners what was actually said, and whether or not it actually was the government admitting that there were aliens. But it was also really cool in this episode to go into the history of UFO sightings. So here's a moment from that. And over those 22 years, they documented 12,618 different UFO sightings.
Wow.
They have like 100,000 pages of documents. They are all publicly available. I did not comb through them all, but it's like an interesting collection if you want to look through it. Those 100,000 pages included one report from Betty and Barney Hill, who claimed that they were captured and examined by extraterrestrials in rural New Hampshire, which is where we are. So they might have been the first people to start the whole alien abduction and probing story that then spread and a bunch of people used. Thanks, Betty and Barney Hill.
That's such a duo name. Like,
I know. Like, it sounds like it shouldn't be real history.
No, not at all.
It was made up.
Okay, I just looked it up because I thought it was true. But Barney from the Flintstones, his wife is named Betty. Barney Rubble and Betty Rubble. When did the Flintstones... Flintstones was made by aliens, we're figuring out. We're connecting the dots.
Connecting the dots, we're following the trail.
That's why it's so accurate to the time. We weren't alive in the prehistoric era, but aliens were.
Aliens were. They saw it. It's a documentary,
yeah.
The Flintstones. Yeah, so Betty and Barney Hill, not Rubble, they were included among the Project Blue Book sightings that were documented. I also got to share my personal experience with UFO sightings, so if you want to hear that, you got to listen to the episode. My next favorite is episode 69. Nice. It's called Particles in the Swiss Alps, and it's about the standard model of particle physics. I didn't take any particle physics classes in high school or college, although I did have to study them for the physics GRE. That doesn't mean I knew them at all, and so I had to relearn them when I was writing my book, The Milky Way, an Autobiography of Our Galaxy, and then I wanted to talk about it here on the pod. So I like this episode because it represents a topic in astronomy that, isn't my strength, but that's something that I want to do with the pod. I started Pale Blue Pod because I wasn't in grad school anymore, and I wasn't going to weekly talks about new astronomy discoveries. I wasn't regularly interacting with research astronomers. I wanted to make sure that I didn't forget how space works, and I wanted my own way of staying up to date on space news and research. So Pale Blue Pod is that for me. It's also an opportunity for me to stretch the bounds of my existing knowledge, not just chasing new things, but trying to expand the old stuff that's already there. So expanding my existing knowledge of particle physics, and I get to do that through episodes like this. And then at the end, Corinne and I choose what the nicest particle is. So check it out. What do you think is the nicest quark? Is it up, down, strange, charm, top, or bottom?
I mean, it's going to be charm for me.
Okay, yeah. Because it's the most charming?
I think it's the most charming, and, I feel, lucky with it. I'm imagining a fun charm bracelet. I'm imagining, a little necklace if I were to ever buy myself jewelry. Catbird always has, cute little New Yorkie charms.
Ooh, that is nice. Yeah. Okay.
Runner-up is strange, obviously.
Obviously, yeah. I think I actually would have gone bottom.
Ooh, okay.
Because it is helping us learn about the Higgs field. I think that's a nice thing for it to do.
I thought you were going to say because of butts.
And also that.
And also butts.
And also butts.
The nicest butt is bottom.
Let's move on to leptons. Yeah, let's do electron versus muon versus tau. What do you think is better? What's nicest?
Tau.
Why?
I just get good energy from it,
Great. Say no more.
I think because muon, I'm getting like a villain vibe.
Ooh.
This is all
Okay.
on name alone.
That's fine. That's fine, because I didn't give you any additional information about them.
And good.
Muon also makes me think of like muon cannons, which I think some sci-fi villains use. So, yeah.
So I was right. I had a good read.
Okay, but now we have to choose between the tau and the tau neutrino.
Well, neutrino feels like the evil twin, which I know is not
Okay.
true, but I'm thinking in a very Mario, Wario sense.
Great. And between the charm quark and the tau.
Charm.
Great. Okay, so the best fermion is the charm quark.
Easy bracket. Charm wins.
Great. Now we need to figure out what the best boson is. What is the nicest boson?
Tough, because Higgs is the most famous. But I like gluon. As a crafter, I can really appreciate some good bonding. Bonding time, bonding glue, anything
Love
that
that.
bonds.
Love that. Okay, so Corinne, we now have to decide between the charm quark and the gluon.
Ooh.
Charm quarks, they have charge, they're intermediate mass, and they're not very stable. The gluon, it has no charge. It quite literally holds the universe. Actually, no, the thing that holds the universe together is gravity, but it holds everything in the universe together with itself. What's the nicest particle?
It's going to be gluon. It's just reliable, wholesome, and charm can only get you so far.
All right, well, we are going to crown the gluon the nicest particle in the standard model of particle physics.
Thanks, gluon.
My next favorite episode and my final favorite episode featuring Corinne is episode 89, Uranus in a Hot Air Balloon. At the end of the episode, Corinne and I play a fun game where we try to match the moons of Uranus to a description that I give them. And all of Uranus's moons are named after literary figures. It's the only planet whose moons aren't named for mythological figures. So we played that game and I got to recite some poetry to Corinne and also test her knowledge of Shakespeare. It was quite fun. It says, I pray thee, gentle mortal, sing again. Mine ear is much enamored of thy note. And then later, this character says, my Oberon, what visions have I seen? Methought I was enamored of an ass.
This is Midsummer's Night Dream.
Yes, it is.
That's so fun. You thought I was enamored of an ass.
Methought. So do you know the character?
Titania.
Yeah, she's the queen of the fairies in Midsummer Night's Dream, Oberon being the king of the fairies, and she is tricked by Puck into falling in love with a character who's been transformed into a donkey.
Oh, Puck.
So yes, she did. She was enamored of an ass. Aren't we all? Aren't we all?
We all have to do it once.
We all get, magicked by a fairy at least once in our lives. The moon itself was one of the ones discovered by William Herschel. It was discovered on January 11th, 1787. It is the largest of all of Uranus's moons, with a diameter of about 1,000 miles. And there are topographical features on the moon that indicate some tectonic activity, which is pretty cool.
Cool. Just like us.
My next favorite episode is episode 110, Space X Theater with Victoria Male. It was, as a former theater kid, so fun to explore the different ways that space and theater overlap, not just talking about plays that are set in space or about astronomers, but also kind of the philosophical overlaps between these two communities. Like this. Both communities are really good at respecting reference frames. So in astronomy, we know that space doesn't prefer one direction over another, that there's no up or down. Even on big enough scales, gravity doesn't work in one specific direction because there are massive objects all around you pulling you with their gravity. So we are always very careful to say what our reference frame is. If you're giving a velocity for a planet around a star, you have to say, is that velocity relative to the star that it's orbiting or to like the center of the galaxy that it's in, for example. In theater, this
Me wanting, I just like you saying these words, I just start crying.
in theater, they also have to deal with multiple perspectives at once because there are the actors on stage and the audience looking at them, and their perspective is flipped from each other. So one of my favorite things about theater, and I still use this today, is the house left versus stage left thing.
Yes.
Where you say explicitly what perspective or what reference frame you're using for your directions. And I admire that a lot.
That's so brilliant. And also, and I guess as an actor too, it's like your experience of the play will be completely different. And I don't know if this is right because you were talking about physics was my worst subject in school. So I don't know if this is right, but also just like from the character, like there's the audience perspective and then there's one character's perspective and another character's perspective. And then also talking about my queen stage master, then there's just like the people you don't see behind the scenes, making sure the audience's perspective is perceived in a certain way.
Yes.
Of all the techies that we could not do it without.
Even the act of like marking the stage for character placement or for like furniture placement, like props, whatever. Setting a specific point in space to be the reference point. We often do this when we're doing our observations, where if we want to study a field of stars, we will pick one star that we know very well to be the calibration star. And we like set our telescope to that and we study it. And then we use whatever measurements we get to calibrate the stars around it so that we know, like if the instrument has been upgraded or if the atmospheric conditions are a little bit different from night to night, using a reference star to calibrate gives us like a consistency in our information.
So what you're saying is I'm basically an astrophysicist.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I knew it.
As are all actors. Or anyone who's ever gone to see a play, really.
Right. Yes. No, don't take that. Don't. No, it's just me.
I think another reason I liked this episode so much was because my weird blend, my fun blend of astro and folklore, I often combine it through fictional world building. And this episode was as close to a fictional world building episode as I've wanted to get with Pale Blue Pod. For about a year now, I've actually been leading a fictional world building club ever since I stopped hosting Exolore. So if you want to create a piece of theater or a book or a game that is inspired by space or not, we have fantasy people, we have some historical fiction people. If you are trying to build a fictional world, to tell a story or host a game, please reach out, palebluepodcast@gmail.com, and we can talk about getting you into the club, maybe. My next favorite episode is 122, Dark Energy with Chris Allen. I also did a Dark Matter episode with Chris, and I had such a blast. I had to have him back to talk about dark energy. These two topics are among the most common topics that I get questions about when I give public lectures or something. So I knew I needed to do an episode on both of them. And the reason this episode makes the top 9 list is because it was during that recording that I got a very stark reminder of exactly how much academic culture is kind of my default and how important it is for me to have someone else around when I'm discussing stuff like this. So here you go. This was a huge paper in 1929. This was kind of his biggest paper ever. It has more than 1,100 citations if you go and look it up. The paper was called A Relation Between Distance and Radial Velocity Among Extragalactic Nebulae. So very straightforward title, which I love. And
wait, you think that's straightforward?
It tells you exactly what he studied.
To a scientist, that's so straightforward. Read that again. Read that one more time and tell me how straightforward that is.
Okay, sure. A relation between distance and radial velocity among extragalactic nebulae. It tells you the relationship between the two things he studied, which were distance and velocity of these extragalactic sources.
Please, I think if you live in New York City, go outside and ask 4 random people if that's straightforward.
No, you're so right. You are so right.
As a scientist, you're
I'm skewed.
completely correct. Because I'm like, I don't know what it means, but I know what it means. But you were like, so straightforward.
This is why it's good to talk to people outside of academia, because you're right. That's not straightforward.
Nebulae.
But my sense is just so skewed. Love Chris. If you're in Charlottesville, Virginia, check him out. He's a comedian based there. He does stand-up comedy in the area. And finally, my 9th favorite episode chronologically is episode 127, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy with Christina Kahn. I had to include one of the movie review episodes on this list, and Hitchhiker's Guide is my favorite movie that I've covered on the pod so far. And it was so fun to discuss the differences between the book and the movie with Christina, and we both had a very similar peeve at the end of the movie.
At the end, they're like, hey, Arthur, we're about to like reset Earth, but like you have full control over the entire planet. Is there anything you'd like to change? And he's not like, let's bring back some extinct species. Let's get rid of these like fracking. I don't know. Is it a rig? How do you frack? I don't know. Like, let's, like anything. He does nothing. He's like, it's good.
That was very, like, white man in 2005. The world is perfect and nothing needs to change.
Well, especially because he's like, do you want to change anything you think the Earth could do without? And he's like, yeah, me. And it's like, okay, good. Dude, I'm really glad you're having this, like, character moment. But, like, what about the good of the planet?
Absolutely. That was a peeve. What would you have said in that situation? Because I would have needed to have been like, okay, give me 24 hours. I will have a complete list to you.
Yes.
Soon.
I would have said yes. I would have said, like, can I take a couple minutes? Do you have Wi-Fi? My first thought is a list of like the species that have gone extinct in the last like 50 years. If you go back much farther than that, I think you're playing with fire, but stuff recently extinct species, let's save those. Also, maybe can we just, and this obviously was written in like maybe the 60s or something, so 50s to 70s sometime I don't really remember the publication date, but they weren't thinking 79, thank you. They weren't thinking about this then as much, but like let's just take those coastlines back a little bit. Let's just take like a little, like 0.1% of the oceans back and take a chill pill on these rising coastlines. Those are my first couple. Undo some damage that humans have wrought.
Yeah. Back in 2005, you're right. Push back those coastlines. Let's add some permafrost back, and let's definitely
some
clear
Amazon.
up that ozone.
Clear up the ozone. Yeah, there's a lot of good that could have been done.
Yeah,
Arthur.
Those were my top 9. I would love to hear what your favorite episode has been, if you have one. If you can't choose just one, oh no, I'll take multiples, I guess. If you really could only give me a few. No, but it would be awesome to hear which episodes have resonated with you, and maybe that will inspire some new episodes in the future. Hi, it's me. Of course it is. There's no one else here this episode. I want to take some time to say thank you to all of my patrons. As an independent podcaster, it'd be really hard to make this show without you, so thank you all so much. And I want to give a special shout out and a huge thank you to my Sun Like Stars, Scott Reynolds, Tom T, Nicole Bartlett, Ashley Shambo, and Mark Mahoney. I'm visiting my bestie right now, and I hope you all get to see your besties soon, even though the universe is always there for you and is your friend. But for the rest of you who aren't any of my patrons, if you want to support this indie podcast, you can do that on Patreon. You can also hear your name on the show. You can make it onto my patron star chart and get research notes for most episodes for $5 a month. And you can join at patreon.com/palebluepod. Or you can make a one-time donation as a supernova at the PayPal link in the episode description and become a bright spot in the pale blue pod sky, a transient, which I have talked about in this episode and ones before. Of course, if you can't support the show financially, I understand. That makes so much sense. And you're still space. I love you so much. The best way to help the show grow is actually to get more people listening to it. So if you could take an episode that you love, or this one, which has all the greatest hits, and send it to someone who you think would also love the show, then that just helps everyone in the situation. There are so many wins going on, and I would appreciate that. So thank you in advance. My next message is a podcast recommendation for another show in the Multitude Collective called Join the Party. It's an actual play podcast with tangible worlds, genre-pushing storytelling, and collaborators who make each other, and of course the listeners, laugh each week. Game Master Eric and the emphatic players Amanda, Brandon, and Julia welcome everyone to the table, from longtime TTRPG players to folks who have never touched a role-playing game before and didn't even know that's what RPG stood for. You can hop into their current campaign, the drama and excitement of a superhero high school, and they're actually at the end of their fall semester, so now is a good time to catch up. It's told through the game Masks, which I haven't played before, but they're going to teach you everything that you need to know about the game to enjoy the story. You can also marathon their completed stories. Campaign 3 had a pirate story set in a world of plant and bug folk that they homebrewed themselves. The campaign was a Monster of the Week game set in a weird summer camp, and the second campaign was a modern superhero game right after Campaign 1, which was a high fantasy story for fans of the classics. So what are you waiting for? Pull up a chair and join the party by searching for Join the Party in your podcast app or going to jointhepartypod.com. That link is also down in the episode description. Okay, I'm going to go back to hanging out with my bestie. Y'all can get back to listening to this episode. But now I want to talk about what listeners have already said that they've learned from Pale Blue Pod. I have a few of the responses I got on Instagram here. Queer Bookworm on Instagram learned that, quote, things aren't sucked into black holes like a vacuum. Things fall in because of gravity. Now I'm annoyed when they get it wrong in sci-fi shows. Same. I'm so sorry. This is why I don't watch much sci-fi, because it does annoy me when they get it wrong, and it seems like it might be right to the untrained eye, because I don't enjoy seeing blatant misinformation. Sue me. But I do have some new information about things falling into black holes for you, Queer Bookworm. This is a greatest hits episode, but I can't resist sharing new information with you. So material falling into a black hole, not getting sucked in, but slowly spiraling in due to gravity, it forms an accretion disk, this kind of flat disk of material around the black hole. And all of the material within that disk will rub against each other, creating friction that produces heat and light. And the light, the radiation power that the light produces, that can actually be strong enough to push gas away. So there is this balancing act. If too much stuff falls onto the accretion disk, it will produce more radiation that will prevent more things from falling onto the disk as quickly. The limit between an acceptable amount of things falling on the disk and too much stuff falling on the disk so it stops the rest of the infalling, that is called the Eddington accretion limit. But sometimes things get super Eddington. They can accrete things faster than that limit under very weird conditions. And when we see examples of super Eddington accretion out in space, that's exciting because that gives us another data point that lets us study this extreme phenomenon. And some of these examples of super Eddington accretion that we see are happening very early in the universe. The farther away we look in space, the farther back in time we're looking. And we see some supermassive black holes very far away, so very early in the universe, that are much bigger than we would expect them to be, because we don't expect that they could grow that quickly by gathering more material. They would have to be very, very far above the Eddington limit. But does that mean they have to form that large in the first place? We're not totally sure how that could happen either. So we are actively looking for giant black holes that are accreting things quickly. And the Chandra Observatory, which we did cover in episode 56, recently observed a distant black hole, a quasar called RAX J0320-35. RAX is the Rapid ASCAP Continuum Survey, but ASCAP is also an acronym. It stands for the Australian Square Kilometre Array Pathfinder. So it's a nested acronym that describes a survey that maps the entire sky with radio waves every few weeks. It does that over and over again so that you can compare the sky at different times and see what astronomers call transients, or these objects that are there sometimes, but they don't last very long, or they move really fast. So they're there sometimes, but not there necessarily the next time you observe that same region in space. This quasar was actually discovered in 2023, but then was observed in 2025 with the Chandra Observatory. Chandra is an X-ray observatory, so it's not immediately obvious that this quasar that was discovered with a radio survey would also be very bright in the X-rays, but this one is. It is surprisingly bright in X-rays, and that suggests that it's super Eddington, so it's really high above the Eddington accretion limit. It's accreting a lot more material per year than we expect it to. The paper author called the black hole a unique laboratory, so they're going to go back and continue studying this quasar to understand exactly how quickly things can fall into black holes because of gravity. So I'm so glad you've learned about black holes, queer bookworm, and I hope you continue to learn about them as you listen to the pod. Okay, next, Jamie, my pal from Lectures on Tap, hey Jamie, I hope you're listening, learned that Vera Rubin, who she called a female Jewish icon, I agree, quote, was the first to produce irrefutable evidence for the existence of dark matter before she was, quote, snubbed by the Nobel Committee, end quote. That is true. We love Dr. Vera Rubin. We covered her in episode 5, I think, in a scientist bio. And I've covered dark matter in an episode with Chris Allen. So dark matter and Dr. Vera Rubin both have the pod's utmost respect. I do have some new information for you on dark matter, Jamie. So we are still trying to figure it out. We haven't exactly discovered what it is yet, but the Lux Zeppelin detector in South Dakota that I talked about in the dark matter episode has gotten even more sensitive since I put out that episode. They just put out a press release like last month, which is exciting. In other news, a Nature paper from last month revealed simulations with the program EDGE. It's called the Engineering Dwarfs at Galaxy Formations EDGE simulation. I don't think that you should be able to use the acronym word in the expanded acronym. Like, I don't think this is exactly the same as using a word in its definition, but it feels adjacent, and I don't like it. Anyway, with this EDGE simulation, this group of researchers found a new class of globular cluster. I will explain how that relates to dark matter in a second. So globular clusters are groups of thousands of stars that are all clumped together, and you see them around the Milky Way. They are around the same size, and they have around the same number of stars as many of the dwarf galaxies that we see orbiting the Milky Way and other galaxies like it. Except the globular clusters do not have dark matter, and the dwarf galaxies have more dark matter proportionally by mass than some larger, like spiral and elliptical galaxies do. So in the simulation, this team was trying to figure out what is the difference between these globular clusters and the dwarf galaxies. Why does one have dark matter and the other doesn't? So they ran simulations that took into account a lot of different factors: wind from supernova explosions, all sorts of gravitational dynamic interactions between stars and clusters of stars. And the simulation yielded 3 different types of objects. It produced globular clusters and dwarf galaxies, but also a new third type of object called a globular cluster-like dwarf. Not the most creative name, but these GCDs are they're the same size and they exist within galaxies like the globular clusters do, but they have some dark matter. less than the dwarf galaxies, but, this intermediate amount of dark matter. And that is interesting because that means we can go out into the Milky Way and try and find examples of this. And the paper did. So that's new stuff on dark matter. There's also a new kind of untested hypothesis. Every once in a while, we do get these where someone publishes a paper and it's like, hey, what if everything we believe about the universe is wrong? And they are, a well-educated person at a reputable university. And so I'm going to share it with you. I don't think it's the case. This is an extraordinary claim. And as my would-be good buddy, Carl, said, that requires extraordinary evidence. So there is this paper from last month out of the University of Ottawa where a theoretical physicist has hypothesized that the universe is older than we think it is. Most astronomers and physicists agree that it's a little bit less than 14 billion years old. This physicist is saying that it's 27 billion years old, and that what we think is dark matter and dark energy is actually just the consequence of universal forces like gravity or electromagnetism getting weaker over time. And I don't really have anything further to say about that. I will be keeping an eye on this for you listeners. That's what I'll say. Okay. We have from Ursa Joanna or Ursa Joanna on Instagram, who said that they learned that blue is hotter than red. Yes. I actually label all of the hot, cold things in my apartment with the hot thing being blue tape and the cold thing being red tape. So I love it. And if more people hopped onto this correct trend, then we can push back against the people who say that red should be hot. We can do it. If we just band together, the people united will never be divided by accurate temperature color reflection. I'm just recording this alone in my closet, going a little wacky. It's fine. Finally, from Jana Linder, Vika Passara, and Floyd Timmermans on Instagram on the post. They all said in various ways that they've gotten closer to the universe, even going from being scared of it to being in love with it from listening to Pale Blue Pod. And y'all, that is exactly what I wanted to do with this podcast. It makes me so happy. Like, you have no idea how happy it makes me that people listening to Pale Blue Pod have been able to change their perspective of the universe and their place in it. Aside from making sure I remembered what I had learned about the universe and continued to learn new things, that was my other goal, was to help more people be a friend to the universe. So I'm glad. Are you all like going out and getting mani-pedis with the universe next? What are you doing? Are they being invited to your wedding? I'm so happy that you've gotten closer to the universe we call home. The reason I wanted to help more people develop that friendship is because I know that so many people are afraid of space. I don't personally know the statistics, but I went out and looked for some. A satellite company called Inmarsat asked 20,000 people globally about their perceptions and feelings of what's happening in space, and 97% of the people who responded saw space as a threat in some way, either from pollution or asteroids or satellite surveillance from low Earth orbit. So yeah, 97 people are wary of space. 1 in 9 people, according to that same survey, are terrified of what could happen if they were to go to space. There was a separate study by the Pew Research Center that found that 65% of Americans are uninterested in space travel. And that's not necessarily the same thing as being afraid of space, but there's some discomfort there. No matter how many sci-fi shows that they show us with this perfect future interplanetary utopia, a lot of people are going to not want to personally interact with it. And that's fine. You don't have to go to space. I don't want to go to space. But I firmly believe that knowing about space and being comfortable thinking on those bigger time and size scales can only benefit us here on Earth. That is why my third book after Mothers of Invention comes out in August of 2026. My third book is going to be Cosmophobia. I had the idea for a while, kind of around the time I started thinking of Pale Blue Pod, but the title is Dr. Stefan Alexander's idea. I was in Canada at the Perimeter Institute in Waterloo for the SciComm Collider organized by Dr. Katie Mack, who is an amazing science communicator. She has a book out already called The End of Everything, astrophysically speaking, and I think she's working on another book now. So check out Dr. Katie Mack if you don't know about her already. But she had arranged this meeting for science communicators to get together and network and like trade skills. And at a lunch during this SciComm Collider, I was sitting next to Stefan Alexander, who is an amazing physicist and jazz musician. He actually is the reason there's a chapter about jazz in the Mothers of Invention book, because he did a jazz performance where he, while he was like in between playing, I want to say the saxophone, but I could be wrong, he gave a lecture about cosmology, and I was just like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. But we were sitting there having lunch, and I talked about the topic for my third book, about how it's going to be people who are afraid of space and where that comes from and how they can kind of get over it. He came up with the title Cosmophobia. So thank you, Stefan. And let's look out for that book. If the trend holds, I will publish a book every 4 Augusts. So, maybe in August of 2030, we'll get Cosmophobia. Although I think I can write Cosmophobia a lot quicker than I wrote Mothers of Invention. No, I started working on Mothers of Invention after I started Pale Blue Pod. But just so you all know, Mothers of Invention is the hardest writing challenge I have ever given myself. So it'll be a nice little palate cleanser to get back to writing about space for Cosmophobia. It is going to be my first interview-based book, which I don't really do, so that'll be a new skill for me. But yeah, that'll be a breath of fresh air, I think. So that's all the past. That is my favorite episodes out of the 150. That's what listeners have learned so far out of the 150. I don't plan on stopping here. There are other shows in the Multitude Network that have 450. They're closing in on 500 episodes. So we have a long way to go. And I have some plans. I want to start digging deeper into the physics processes of things. On a recent episode, I kind of dove deeper into the process of nuclear fusion than I probably would have last year if I did the same episode then. So I want to keep doing that. I want to challenge myself to do that and learn those things and learn how to teach you those things. And I want to challenge you to hear them so we can go on that journey together. I want to start doing listener questions more regularly. I did an AMA at episode 50. And then there was another listener Q&A with Mayana Barron, who's fantastic, just joined Multitude and is now doing a podcast with editor Misha called Simple and Clean. So check it out. I loved Mayana so much that I had her back on the pod again, multiple times. So go check out Simple and Clean. Yeah, I want to talk to you and hear from you more often if that's something y'all are interested in. So if you ever have a space question, if you ever have a topic that you want to hear more about, please send an email to palebluepodcast@gmail.com or reach out to the pod on Instagram. We are palebluepod there. I also want to do a series like the planets one, where I go through each region of the electromagnetic spectrum, maybe branching out from the telescopes to do more astronomy missions, especially ones that are collaborations across multiple observatories. I have always been kind of resistant to being a space news show because the time pressure, I think, would stress me out. But there are going to be some changes behind the scenes that might make that a little bit easier going forward. So I do kind of want to get into the habit of every once in a while doing more recent news stories. I'm going to start doing YouTube videos, kind of. I am currently working with an artist, the same artist who did the illustrations for Fate and Fabled, the PBS show that I co-hosted with Dr. Emily Zarka, a monster expert. I'm working with an artist to craft a cozy vibe that you can throw on in the background while you're listening to us. And I have heard that some people, we keep them company while they're driving or while they're going to work or while they're doing dishes at night. And that is so nice. And it would be really awesome if we could also kind of be visually with you and help you create like a cozy, comfy space in a very chill, lo-fi vibe kind of way. I'm also working on merch. I'm working with a new merch company to get some warm, comfy items ready for you by the cold snap. I'm talking to them about blankets and hoodies and fleece-lined beanies so I can actually wear them with my hair without it getting all frizzy. So be on the lookout for that coming up. And it's been a year, actually, like to the week since Corinne graduated from the Podiversity. Love Corinne, and it's been so awesome seeing what she's been up to since. And it's been really fun and interesting talking to a new guest each week. But it's time to bring some stability in with someone new, not to replace Corinne's memory. No one could ever do that, but to usher in a new era of the pod. So next week, I'm going to be putting up reruns of some of my favorite episodes so you can listen to them again. The week after, I have a Halloween holiday special episode for you. And then the week after that, Pale Blue Pod is going to be stepping into its next season with a brand new friend to the universe joining us all. I can't wait to take the next steps of Pale Blue Pod's journey with you all, and I want to thank you so much for taking the first 150 with Corinne and me and my guests. But no matter how many steps you've taken, remember, you are space. Bye. Pale Blue Pod is hosted by me, Dr. Moiya McTier, aka the universe's bestie. I created the show with original co-host Corinne Caputo, a comedienne extraordinaire, and help from the Multitude Productions team. Our theme music is by Evan Johnston, and our cover art is by Shay McMullen, and our audio editing is handled by the incomparable Misha Stanton. I am Go Astro Mo everywhere online, and you can stay in touch with the show and the universe by following Pale Blue Pod on Instagram or checking out our website, palebluepod.com. We are a member of Multitude, an independent podcast collective and production studio. So if you like Pale Blue Pod, you will love the other shows that live at multitude.productions. And if you want a shout out on the show and research notes for every episode, you can join our community over at patreon.com/palebluepod for just about $1 per episode. Thank you so much for listening to Pale Blue Pod. I'll be back next week. Bye.